Hello everyone and welcome to my impressions video. This is the Sword of Fargoal, and again this is another one of the games that's on the Commodore 64 DTV plug and play device. And like the gateway to Apshai, which I've already done a video for, this is a sort of maze exploring role playing game. But the difference being with this one is it appears to be a bit more playable, or certainly in my opinion anyway, it's a bit more playable. It takes an absolute age for the game to start, and this is primarily, I think, because it's actually rolling the statistics for the game, or for your character should I say. It would appear that, as with the gateway to Apshai, that things are done randomly, but certainly in playing this game I found it to be a lot less frustrating. Although that said, it is equally as slow, but it's, again, like I said with the Sword of Apshai, it is a very old game, and when you've only got 64, well, you don't, I mean, the common misconception is that the developers for the Commodore 64 games had 64K of memory to play with, which they didn't. I think it was more like 48K, because the 64K was pretty much the entire RAM of the computer. But the moment you plug a joystick in, then certain elements of the memory is going to be taken by the joystick when you're developing the game, because you've got to put lines of code in and it's got to remember there's a joystick in there, and so on and so forth. So the actual input devices take up an amount of memory as well, so there was very little that they actually had to play with. Anybody who actually had a Commodore 64 and plugged the joystick into port 1, you actually would find that the joystick, if you move the joystick and press the fire button, it would actually input keyboard characters, and this is because it was having to share resources. And it always makes me laugh today when developers talk about the lack of RAM in consoles and PCs and what have you, needing a considerable amount of RAM to run games, and you just wonder how they would have coped back then with such limited RAM available, and having to make a whole game with such limited RAM. But anyway, back to this game. The way the combat is done is by almost like a dice rolls, so you don't actually engage in real-time combat, so to speak. You're not hitting the fire button to hit the character. You simply occupy the same square as the character on the map, and automatically you will end up in combat with them. I found this system to be far better than the system that was employed in the Sword of Apshai. No, what the hell was it called? Gateway to Apshai. This I'm reviewing the Sword of Fargoal. Oh God. And yeah, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the combat system in this is much better. You're not faffing around having to change to a battle stance and then mashing the fire button and hoping that the collision detection is kind to you. This sort of rolls of statistics. At the top of the screen you've got your hits, and that's how many times you can afford to get hit, and you've got experience points as well, because you level up, and when you level up you can take more hits, and obviously means that you can engage the bad guys that are better and more advanced bad guys as well. And in many respects, it's actually quite far ahead of its day. I mean, if you think of modern day role-playing games, they use a very similar system. I mean, for all of its, glitz and glamour, a game like Dragon Age 2 just uses a basic roll system when you go into combat with things, because they follow a very basic role-playing game rule system. You have certain things that you can't possibly consider attacking when you first start the game because you're not experienced enough and you don't have high enough statistics in order to be successful. And it's all sorts of stems from these early role-playing games such as this one, and it's interesting to see that the system is still pretty much used to this day, and I like that. I like that a really old game has played a small, well, when I say a small part, it could be a considerably big part in actual modern day role-playing games. I think that is a really good thing. And what's happening here is this also introduces the fact that you can only carry so much gold, which is a novel thing as well. You can spend gold in somewhere. I think it's a shop. I'm not too sure. And then you can come back and actually pick up the gold that you've left behind, which is marked by them little sorts of crosses that are on the floor. And again, that's another neat touch, and it's something else that was is used in modern day role playing games where you have an inventory and you can only carry so many items, and it adds a little bit of a tactical element to the game. And it has a lot of neat ideas. What it actually does is where he puts the X marks the spot, he's actually hiding the gold. It's not an X, is it? It's a cross. Where the cross marks the spot is him hiding the gold. There's a lot of neat little things in the game, and it's not a fast-paced game at all, but it doesn't need to be. The thing that I don't find as frustrating with this game as I did with the Gateway to Epshai is the Gateway to Epshai, there was a lot of things that didn't make any sense to me in the gameplay. It might make sense to other people who've played the game, but for example, you don't need keys to open the doors, but there are doors which you have to use keys to open, and it appears that you already have the keys in your inventory, and you have to switch to the bit that says keys before you can open a door. And that, to me, is just frustrating. That's frustrating gameplay, because it means you're constantly having to faff around to do a simple task. And although I can appreciate they were probably trying to make a more complex role-playing type of game, games like this don't need it. That's what you do. You do a sacrifice of gold, and it looks like you do that for experience points. And then you can go and collect the gold that you have left behind, as I've done there. So there's a lot of neat little ideas, and I like the levelling up. See, I've leveled up now. Now I've got 14 hit points. Hey, we're on a roll now, on my way to becoming an invincible warrior. And I actually spent probably the most time on the whole of the game, on the whole of the DTV plug and play thing, actually on this. I really enjoyed playing it. Got a lot of enjoyment out of it. If my voice, by the way, sounds a bit croaky, it's because I think I'm coming down with a cold. I've recorded this video early on in the day because I woke up this morning with a sore throat, so the likelihood is that my voice probably won't be as wonderful and as booming as normal, he says, tongue firmly implanted in cheek. But no, it's the problem is with showing a demonstration of this game is because it is very slow paced. It doesn't look like there's a lot of progression going on, but it's just one of them games you sit down to and start playing, and you can die, by the way, quite easily in this. Believe it or not, it is quite easy to be killed. The one disadvantage with these type of games is that because they pre-roll the characters and you don't have any control over what type of character you get in at the start of the game, it could start off being pretty weak in the key department of being able to fight, and so it's probably a good idea in the first instances to actually avoid combat if you got kind of weak statistics until you level up a little bit. The other thing with the game, you probably won't notice so much from the video, but every so often it pauses. Now, it pauses because it moves when it pauses. It moves the bad guys. The computer moves the bad guys around. So that's the reason why the game will pause once every so often. It took me a while to figure out what was going on there, because I'd be moving around and then suddenly the controls would stop and I'd be thinking, what's going on here? Why have the controls stopped working? And it was then I noticed it's kind of almost turn-based, in that you have so many moves, then the computer halts you and moves the characters. So it is kind of a turn-based RPG. And they also have guys that come along every so often, like that mercenary there who took a huge amount of hit points off me. They'll pop up as well every so often, so you can think you've cleared the dungeon of bad guys, but they'll come in through the stairways and what have you. So you've always got to keep a sharp lookout as well, because obviously that mercenary was a higher level, and because he took quite a considerable amount of points off me. So now I'm going into a new area, which will probably look very similar to the old area in terms of graphical style, but obviously we'll have a different layout of the map, he says. Waiting. Yep. And I wasn't really expecting anything else. I wasn't expecting some kind of amazing variety in the graphics. Like I say, I mean, a game this old and a game of this type, just a lot of the work that the computer's doing is in the background. It's not designed to be a graphical showcase. It's designed to be an in-depth, or certainly as in-depth as possible, role-playing game. It's not designed to showcase the graphical capabilities of the Commodore 64 or any of the other machines that it come out on. So yeah, that's the Sword of Fargoal pretty much. Like I say, I really enjoyed playing it, and it was one of the games that was on the Commodore 64 DTV plug and play device that I probably spent the most time playing. I kind of really got into it. It became quite an engrossing little game, and certainly one of my favourite games on the pack. And it's well worth checking out. It's you'll be puzzled at first by it. You'll wonder what the hell is going on, but it is actually a good game once you get going, and there is a lot that the game has to offer. So yeah, the Sword of Fargoal, I would definitely comes recommended. I've only got one more of these videos to do, then I'll go back to my normal gaming reviews after that. But anyway, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you again soon with my last review. Thanks.